Welcome, everyone. I am John Ryan. And before I get to the beginning of the show, I do want to try to do some bragging here. I guess it's not bragging if it's fact, but I am ranked number one on several sites, one of which is Sports Capping and all their affiliates. Among 100 or more professional handicappers, I think it's the first time I've ever been ranked one, but as you can see on this little graphic that the sites do from me so that there's 100% full transparency, this is where I rank. So it's ranked number one overall. We're seeing the card really, really well. I have a game going at noon today between Xavier and UConn. If time permits, I'll give that out free here. And then you can get an example of how this thing works. I get algorithms. I have 5,000 of them. And every morning I run them. And whatever team situation it says to consider betting on, I start my day doing that and then dig further into the data. So I bet numbers. I don't bet mascots. I don't bet teams. I bet situational conditions that teams find themselves in. And it's been a very consistent run. It's not a run that has been like 10-0 or 12-0, but it's 5-3, 4-3, 4-2, once in a while 4-0. But it's been a lot of fun. So, welcome to the show, Jim Coventry from RotoWire, the GOAT of DFS. If you haven't listened to this guy for your NFL lineups, then you're making a huge mistake. It's like not listening to me about the Players' Championship, which we'll get to in a second. And we also have Rudy Reyes from the Rude Dog Show, the founder. He's interviewed tremendous names over his illustrious career, Ron Jaworski being one of them. Let's see, who else did you have, Rudy? Recently you had the Penn State wide receiver that played for the Dolphins.
Yeah. Oh, Jimmy Duffy.
Yeah. I mean, the names are, he could spend 30 minutes telling you the names of the people that have been on the show.
Yeah.
So if you're in the chat room,
Excel spreadsheet.
If you're in the chat room, feel free to ask us questions. We're going to start with a brief run here at the lineups that I did for DFS, which I am going to include as part of the premium package moving forward. I seem to have a good niche doing DFS DraftKings with the PGA event. And I did select Rory McIlroy to win this event, and he's off to a great start. He was 6 under through 8 holes. He bogeyed the 18th. He started on number 10. But he looks really, really good. He zinged one in on 17, the Island Green. That was by far the best controlled shot of anybody yet to play. A lot of guys are trying to take spin off, but then the spin is too much, and the greens are just razor thin right now. They are faster than I've played that course a lot of times, that you guys know, and I can't imagine trying to putt on those greens right now. And today's only Thursday, so it's only going to get tougher. And you may see an event where whoever is the low score today, maybe add 1 or 2 more under over the next 3 days. And, this time of year in Florida, March, the weather is chaos. It can come in off the Gulf and wreak havoc. And it's not a guarantee that every single day is just going to be, Floridian weather. So Xander Schauffele's 4 under. I said McIlroy is leading at 5. Nick Taylor -4. Taylor Montgomery -3. Tommy Fleetwood making a good run here. He's -3. And a guy named Ludwig Aberg. He's a new name on the tour. And I'm telling you what, this guy can hit pure shots like I've never seen. So keep an eye on him. And then the one I did bet at 120 to 1 to win. I also got him at, I forget what it was, to make top 20. Doug Gim. He was like, I think $6,100 on DraftKings, and I thought he was an absolute steal. And a couple of my professional friends out in Vegas agreed with the pick, and they made the pick before I even mentioned it to them. So that guy tees off this afternoon, so you still have time to bet him now. So anyway, enough about golf. Let's start with the NFL free agency. And I must say, I live in the Princeton, New Jersey area. And the Eagle fans have an awful lot to cheer for and be thankful for. And we talked about it last week and the week before. And I think we all were in agreement that the situation with the Eagles and losing Doug Swift was going to give them the avenue to try to get Barkley, and lo and behold, they did. Now, of course, the way the Philly sentiment is, Jim and Rudy, is that, oh, we paid too much money for him. He's a bust. He's too old. Look, he didn't do anything with the Giants. Well, one thing I can say to that, he never ran behind an offensive line. They were always hurt. This past year, they were riddled with injuries. It was almost like they had tight ends playing guard. That's how bad the offensive line got. And nobody's fault. Injuries happen in the NFL. Let's start with Jim here and give us a rundown, a recap from last week of some of the best bullet points that you saw happening in the NFL.
So over the years, we have seen the running back position devalued. Teams are paying less for running backs. When teams sign running backs to a contract, they're making them take pay cuts or they're releasing them. And it has been a mess in terms of the running backs. But then we had this year's free agent class. You had Kirk Cousins at quarterback. You had most of the top names at receiver off the board. Basically, when we started free agency, Marquise Brown and Calvin Ridley were the big names. So that meant we had a lot of very good running backs. Now, before I get into this, I'll point this out. The last 10 Super Bowl winners, the lead running back on those teams has made 1.2% of the cap for that team or less. So they have made peanuts. And we have seen playoff caliber teams pop big money on running backs. This is going to be interesting because, again, it's been a 10-year run where teams haven't won. Now, Saquon Barkley to the Eagles, I think the Eagles figure it out. Their defense is not going to be fixed anytime soon. It is going to be a problem. So you invest in Barkley, you bring in the offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore. They're going to push the ball downfield, try to open everything up underneath, open running lanes for Barkley. Also, the mobile quarterback, Jalen Hurts, the RPO freezes linebackers, gives Barkley another edge. Jason Kelsey, the center, is retired, but the rest of the line is still fine. So overall, I think the whole point is this Barkley move allows Philly to potentially have an unstoppable offense that can hopefully overcome their defense. We'll just stop there.
Yeah, and that was one of the questions I had for both of you, is that are they taking a stance where their defense struggled last year mightily down the stretch? They need help at linebacker and safety position. I believe there was a very good safety that is available now from Seattle that is lurking. Do you think that's what their strategy is, Rudy, that they're just going to score 40 points a game and say, come catch us?
I think so. I mean, you're going to see what Saquon had done with the New York Giants is that he was a guy that was used as a switchblade. He can go from the backfield. You can throw him in the outer field. You can put him in the slant. He can be one of those blockers up front and then bump and run to get out into the field. Now, one thing I do love about the Saquon Barkley is that his ability to score and rack up a lot of yards after the catch is something that he's done throughout his career. He did it at Penn State, and he's going to continue doing it in Philadelphia. What I didn't like about the Philadelphia Eagles move, outside of the Saquon Barkley 3-year, $37.75 million deal, was that they didn't do a whole lot in free agency in the secondary. Yeah, they grabbed C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and that's great and wonderful, but that was it. There wasn't anything formidable that you could actually put your head back and say, oh, okay, well, they're going to be okay. Not necessarily. Jim, you pointed out that they're going to be an uphill battle in regards to what they're going to look like in future tense. Right now, they're really still playing with what they have, and of course, Gardner-Johnson is going to be the actual starter. But as far as Saquon's concerned, he's a very, I think he's been really not talked about a whole lot. Yeah, it was kind of a big deal, and Rondé Barber made it a big deal on social media, saying, you're dead to me, you're dead to me. I find that to be completely, I don't know, I hate to say ignorant on the part of Rondé Barber, because I had so much respect for him. Keyword was had. You don't go after another player, and now from a former team that you had been on and done so many great things, and take that away by just acting foolishly. And I think that that's one of the things that he'll look in hindsight and say, well, maybe I should have done that. As far as the throwing points and what that looks like for Jalen Hurts and everybody on that offensive line, including all the weapons they have offensively, I think they're going to be okay. I guess it's going to boil down to whoever scores 45 points or more wins.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me like the NFC could potentially look like the SEC on any given Saturday night, right? I mean, you have these really good defenses, but they get worn down. Even the Alabamas of the world get worn down at halftime, and then it becomes a pinball machine in the third and fourth quarter. That could be some good live in-game betting consideration down the road.
I think so.
You know? Bet the over in the second half in the NFC East.
Yeah. That should be a betting line if it isn't.
Then we'll turn it back to Jim, and two questions, Jim. I'm dying to know where Justin Fields is going to end up because I think he's getting screwed. Period. I think they're making a big mistake getting rid of him at this point. And even if he's a backup, I mean, God forbid that the Eagles get him yet as a backup, because I think Fields is kind of like a Jalen Hurts, and you don't want to bring in a Ryan Tannehill, with all due respect to him, as your backup with a team with an offense as complex as the Eagles run at times. So, Jim, tell me where Fields will go and what other teams are lurking that could make a really big splash for their fans.
So Justin Fields, he's in the fourth year of his rookie deal. This year is cheap, but whatever team would acquire him would probably be foolish not to pick up the fifth-year option. But that's about $20 million. And so that's an investment. And I know teams throw money around all the time, but it's really a $20 million investment for next year. And that's what a team acquiring him has to understand. And the problem with the NFL is we think they're so good at scouting. They're not. They don't look around the league as much as we think they should. And there's narratives out on Justin Fields about problems in his game. Any reasonable observer would see that it's an incomplete grade on Justin Fields. He has some very good skills, the ability to run. He has a strong arm. But in the offense he's been in with changes overs and coach, poor personnel, he's been dealt a terrible hand. Now, in terms of where can he go, look, we're almost out of landing spots here. There's not much left. I still think, look, I know we talked off air. I just can't believe that Minnesota is going to go into week one and saying, Sam Darnold, you're our guy for 17 weeks. Can't see it. That said, I could see Minnesota hedging right now by bringing in Darnold, seeing what happens in the draft. Does a quarterback fall to them? Is there a trade opportunity to trade up? And then the Raiders are in the same boat. They pick up Gardner Minshew. Again, do they really want him to be a 17-week starter? My guess is probably not. But again, they have him now, and we could get to the draft. And again, same thing as Minnesota. If there's a chance to trade up, if somebody falls, then I think at that point, Justin Fields for either of those teams could be the default option. The Bears won't get their draft pick for this year, maybe, because that trade might not happen until after the draft. But I think if either of those teams does not have a very good option at quarterback, and I don't believe either does, I think those are the chances of the spots where Fields lands up.
Yep. What do you think, Rudy?
Justin Fields is a guy, and you're right, Jim. He's been dealt a very poor hand. I mean, if the guy is still there at the World Series of Poker, he's going to be there for very short amount of time because of the hands that he keeps being dealt. Offensive coaches, quarterback coaches. There's a lot of talk about him coming over to Pittsburgh. There may have been some conversations that Mike Tomlin was, at least from one perspective, had been in conversation with him. But that went basically nowhere. Why? Because they went and grabbed the over 30-plus-year-old Russell Wilson, who's now going to be the inherent starter, at least in my opinion. Of course, he has a battle out between him and Kenny Pickett. We've seen too many years of Kenny Pickett. We already know who Kenny Pickett is, what he's capable of doing. I think that's kind of a no-brainer there. You had mentioned the Las Vegas Raiders. I like that move better. Why? Because AOC is not your guy. He's not going to be your guy, and he probably never will be that guy. There are some things I like from him. His throwing motion, he throws way too many low balls, whereas Justin Fields just much more dynamic and fleet of foot behind a very good offensive line that's protected everyone from Jimmy Garoppolo to Derek Carr. So we'll see exactly where that lands up. As far as Sam Darnold's concerned, Sam Darnold looked great in the game that he did play for the 49ers, segueing into the playoffs last year. But one thing I do know about Sam Darnold, I've interviewed him a multitude amount of times. And one thing I like about him is that he doesn't see a very narrow field. He sees a wider field. He has a big arm. He can get things done, but never playing behind a very solid offensive line. He threw no interceptions, no picks, caused no fumbles, didn't force balls in when he played behind that San Francisco 49ers offensive line. So, and is he going to be the number one starter in Minnesota? Gosh, I hope not. I mean, they're going to need a lot more than that. And I think Justin Fields also a very good fitting, because you don't want a pocket passer. We've seen what Kirk Cousins has done, the consummate businessman, as it were, walking into Atlanta and having Arthur Blank write a blank check, which basically said, write your way a passage. And that's certainly what Kirk Cousins has done everywhere he's went, including the Washington Commanders. So I think the best place for Justin Fields is either staying there with Eberflus and finding out what that offensive line looks like and what kind of protection he's going to get with the weapons downfield that they could get in the NFL draft, or send him over to Las Vegas and just be much more dynamic and have the ability to start behind an offensive line that's not going to give up a whole lot of pressures and force him into very bad situations.
Great breakdown, great insight, Rudy. And I'm going to keep it with you here because I know you're not too publicly known that you are a Steeler fan. But are you pleased that Russell Wilson is now going to be suddenly your starting quarterback? There's not even going to be a quarterback tryout with Kenny Pickett?
Well, I think you're going to see that. I think by de facto, you're going to see Kenny Pickett and Russell Wilson kind of work it out. But look, when you're taking on a Super Bowl champion in Russell Wilson, no, I'm not a fan. It wasn't a gigantic move in the quarterback position, but it certainly was a good move. There are a lot of things that Russell Wilson does have, which includes the Super Bowl ring. He does know how to scramble outside the pocket. Didn't look good in Denver. Why? Because his scheme just did not match his playability, meaning that able to get out from under center, didn't have the greatest blocking up front, and at times not able to read the defenses efficiently. No, he's not the quarterback that he was when he won the Super Bowl, but he's still the quarterback that could bring a much better boost, a better look, and be able to get you many yards down the field because he still has a cannon of an arm in order to do that. And he knows how to scramble when the pressure gets a little too hot in the kitchen. So Russell Westbrook, I'm not Russell Westbrook, I'm saying an NBA, but Russell Wilson is a guy who has certainly shown time and time again that he can get things done when he needs to, and I think he'll do it for the Steelers. But look for them to draft a quarterback. Now that door is open for Mason Rudolph to walk back in it. My question
He's in Tennessee now. He's in Tennessee.
Oh, okay.
Now.
So they end up taking him to Tennessee. Okay, great. For backup purposes, that's exactly where he is and where he landed as a backup, kind of quarterback. Is he going to work that out in Tennessee and be the starter? I don't know. He started for the Steelers. He looked relatively decent, but he's just a game manager. We've seen that from him time and time again. So they're going to grab someone in the NFL draft from a quarterback position, help nurture him, get him along the way, and eventually become the heir apparent, because we know Russell Wilson is getting older, and Kenny Pickett, we've already seen what he can and cannot do. So this could be a grooming opportunity for Mike Tomlin moving forward, at least for the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I don't think Pittsburgh Steelers fans are thinking Super Bowl right now. Stranger things have happened, though, in the NFL. It's usually the team that you really don't think has a chance to get into the conference championship that ends up going. And I've always said this, I think, on every single show. In the last 25 Super Bowls, the following year, in 4 situations, both those teams made the playoffs. Did I say that right? Only 4 times in the last 25 Super Bowls did those same 2 teams make the playoffs the following year. And in fact, there have been years where neither one of them have made the playoffs. So, you have the Chiefs and the Chiefs and boy, I'm drawing a blank. Who did the Chiefs beat?
Oh my gosh. It's like
the 49ers.
Like a month ago. I'm so far out of it.
Nobody remembers number 2.
Oh my gosh. What have you done for me lately? How quickly we forget.
Hey, yeah, exactly. Because nobody remembers number 2.
And that proves it. It's like a month
memorable.
Josh, can I add something
always have deer in the headlights.
Can I add something about the Russell Wilson move?
Sure.
I think overall, Pittsburgh knows exactly what they're getting. And this is the team I profiled that he would go to. And here's why. last year, Sean Payton knew exactly what he had in Russell Wilson. So what did he do in free agency? He adds Ben Powers, the guard. He adds Mike McGlinchey to tackle. Those are run blocking offensive linemen. They're not the best pass protectors. And then they added some tight ends to the roster. It told me that it was going to be a heavy run-based team. Wilson was going to be a game manager. Now, the rate of play action wasn't as high as it should have been. It was decent. It was above average. And so Russell Wilson plays game manager, 26 touchdowns, 8 picks. That was a significant improvement from the 16 touchdowns, 11 picks he had his first year with Nathaniel Hackett. But all that said, you go to Pittsburgh. Arthur Smith, you already know that play action is going to be at the very top of the league. You know the running game is going to be used, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have a running game. They have a decent line, but they have 2 running backs, Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, and Russell Wilson will be the game manager. And in that case, you have George Pickens. And in the Arthur Smith offense, remember when he had A.J. Brown in Tennessee, when they ran that heavy play action and they had the one stud receiver. Now, look, George Pickens is great. He's not A.J. Brown, but he still runs crossers. He is still very good after the catch. It's a very good potential for Russell Wilson to be able to lock in him. And Wilson did well with Cortland Sutton. He did well with DK Metcalf. So having Pickens, this is like a framework that could work for them. I'm not saying Russell Wilson's good, but I'm saying he could be exactly what Pittsburgh needs. And if Pittsburgh defense plays well this year, which they have the ability to do so, a game manager at quarterback who doesn't make a lot of mistakes could be enough to give them maybe a win in the playoffs. They're not beating Kansas City, but that said, better than last year.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I'm going to counter that. I'm going to counter that. And here's why. On the other side of the ball, Tomlin has been in love with Patrick Queen's play since the beginning, since the NFL draft. And the fact alone that the Baltimore Ravens decided to grab him certainly speaks volumes at 3 years, $141 million. That's a lot of dollars that will make a lot of sense every time he makes a pressure, he makes a sack, or he strip sacks someone. So on the other side of the ball, it's fantastic for the Steelers. They do lose a couple of pieces on the offensive side of the ball, but this is for rotational purposes. We see what he did in Baltimore, and now he's coming over to play for the Steelers. I think that to your point, going back to the offensive side of the ball, there are a lot more options to this. When you talk about the speediness and the quickness and the field of vision that Jaylen Warren has, whereas you give that to Najee, he's a forward head runner, and he's an angry runner. There's no doubt about it. I take nothing away from him whatsoever. But the fact alone that you can get speed on the outside, you can use Jaylen Warren in kind of like a switch knife type of situation. I think that there is a propensity there for the team to go on a playoff run as he did last year. I think there's going to be more success offensively from a fluidity standpoint and all the moving pieces and parts. I think overall the Steelers look a lot better heading into a training camp and much less an NFL draft, because that's one less position they're going to have to acquire. And of course, free agency doesn't really allow for anything else. And Justin Fields is not a backup quarterback style. He's more like the A chair versus the B chair. So I think the Steelers are on a big run moving forward, and barring a total meltdown by Kansas City, I think the Steelers will find their way into that conversation for postseason play.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. I think the key point you guys make is the defense, and you can't overlook that. They play really, really well, and Tomlin's been known for that. And again, Tomlin has never had a losing season, yet the fans wanted to have him fired this year. I mean, how can you have a record like that and not be proud of your head coach? I mean, come on.
Playoff wins, man.
500 is not, it's not playoff 500. Playoff football is more than 500 play, though. I'm just a big proponent of take that 500 and go bet it, and then leave the other 500 to the actual coaches that get into the bigger dances as part of the playoff picture.
Hey, real quick, Rudy, you said that Tomlin loved Patrick Queen. Didn't Tomlin call out Queen during a game against the Ravens saying, "You're not Ravens material"? I remember he got after. What happened with that? Because I know I laughed when I heard it.
Be honest with you, he wasn't, because he wanted to draft Patrick Queen. I mean, this was a match made in heaven from a defensive side of the ball. He's always, matter of fact, every single post game, whether they're on the road or they're in Baltimore, he would go up to Patrick Queen and shake his hand. Man, we're going to love to see you in black and gold. So that type of exchange has happened throughout his tenure in Baltimore. And now that he's wearing the black and gold, there's certainly a lot to like about that. This was a Tomlin 100% acquisition. Like there's no way around it because of the love that he has for Patrick Queen. And Queen has done so much for the Baltimore Ravens, like I said. So this is going to be a more stout defense, a very blitzing style defense. And it's going to happen a lot earlier than people expect to happen.
Agreed. One area I want to talk about is getting a little bit more complex with speculating on draft moves, teams trading down to get the player they really need. And the name that always comes to mind this year is the New York Giants. They obviously, as we mentioned, they're without Saquon now, and they really need to be correct 100% in this draft. So I figured if they do nothing, they're not going to get Jaden Daniels, obviously. If the Patriots don't do anything in terms of moving up and down in the draft towards the second round even and accumulating draft assets, I think they're going to take Derek May. And if they don't take him and they do trade down, Marvin Harrison is probably likely to be picked by somebody between them and the Giants. So that eliminates that guy, and it leaves them with Malik Neighbors at wide receiver. So my theory is that the Patriots will move down in the draft if the price is right. And it seems like the only team desperate enough to trade up to try to get Daniels is the New York Giants. And ironically, in 2021, when we had that tremendous, at least it was hyped as a tremendous quarterback draft, which really turned out to be kind of a bust, the Giants did pick a quarterback. And now here they are again in the same slot. And the pressure on the front office has just got to be immense. I wouldn't want to be part of that decision, to be honest with you. But do you think it makes sense that what I'm leading into is that the Eagles are lurking, right? They're way under the cap right now, way under. Like Howie Roseman has to get credit for doing what he's doing. And somehow he has a magic wand where he's able to, write off money and salaries and everything else that puts them, I guess they're around 30 to 40 million under
40. Yeah.
And they do have the draft picks, and, they have 2 fifth-round draft picks that they can dangle along with a second rounder if they wanted. So if they trade, let's say this scenario, the Giants trade down to the Patriots the Patriots trade with the Giants. The Patriots go to number 6. Giants move down to 3. At the very least, they'll have a chance to get Harrison and maybe Daniels. Okay, the Patriots are at 6. They already made one move. They make a move with the Eagles to get more draft assets because the Eagles have the ability to pay more for that 6th pick than anybody else in the NFL right now. And they take the center from Oregon, Jackson Powers Johnson, who I continue to think is a top 10 pick. I might be the only guy on the planet that says that he's going to be a top 10 pick. But they have a backup center in Philly that's going to replace Kelsey, but he can also play guard. This kid from Oregon has played every position at an elite level except left tackle. So what do you think of all these different scenarios? And you can bend them and, change them around any way you want. Let's start with Jim here on this one, see what he's got.
And I may have said this on the last show, it's a quarterback-driven league. If the teams are evaluating the top 3 quarterbacks, any order, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, if teams consider them a franchise builder, they'll go with the first 3 picks in the draft. I think the New England Patriots, if they value whichever quarterback falls to them at 3 as a cornerstone quarterback, they would be foolish to trade it because these opportunities don't come along often. If they win 6 games next year, they're probably not in that discussion for that pick. So all the talk about trading up by teams, yes. But at number 1, the Bears seem to be taking that pick. At number 2, The Commanders seem to be taking a quarterback. And again, I would be stunned if the Patriots, unless, again, if they think the quarterback at 3 is a bust, then they would be wise to trade out and the Giants would be in that discussion. But in that case, the Giants would have the 3rd quarterback valued as a franchise guy. So I think it really all settles on that. And that's why it's really tough for me to guess on trade-ups, because those 3 teams all need quarterbacks desperately.
Great points. I see you shaking your head, Rudy. You agree with all of that? You're muted.
Of course I'm muted. Everything's muted. I feel like muting the entire New England Patriots right now. And I say that because okay, fine. So they grabbed Jacoby Brissett. Not the answer, pure backup, no questions asked. We all know that. We've seen enough of him play. Enough play from him, rather. One of the things that I do think will happen, I think that they could trade up and get Jalen Daniels. There's a lot to like about Jalen Daniels, considering they did get Jacoby Brissett. It's learning what is good out of a quarterback versus what is bad out of the quarterback. It's hard to speculate who's going to go where and what they're going to grab, because they don't even know how that's going to work right now. You're kind of shooting blanks out of a gun when one chamber has the single silver bullet. And right now, if you're New York, you have to wonder, is Drew Lock the answer? Well, he looked great a season ago when he played in Seattle, blew the doors off the Denver Broncos, which was kind of amazing to me, but he did against his former team. Drew Lock, again, serviceable, backup only. So if there's a move up or down and the New York Giants have a plethora of picks, I think if you're New York, you keep drafting down. You don't go after a Daniel Jones. You don't go after these higher top tier type of quarterbacks. Why? Because you want to see what you have first. And the way that you see what you have is by putting them in camp. Now, if there's still free agents out there from a quarterback position that are still haven't really done anything, and Justin Fields is kind of still on the move, and I know that the Bears don't want to send him back to, send him into an NFC cluster, but they would rather see him not play in the NFC and rather see him play for the AFC. Unfortunately, the spots are all basically filled for the AFC except for the Las Vegas Raiders, at least at this point. And that can change any given moment, as you all know. So it's hard to designate who's going to move and when and how and why and where. But if I was a betting man, I'm not. But if I was, I would say New England could probably prove to move up in the draft, grab Jalen Daniels because he fits that system amongst many other systems in the NFL, and do something. And I think that now that Bill Belichick is no longer there, he's not a part of the regime, he's not the general manager or the coach, and he's on the sidelines wondering when his next opportunity for coaching is going to be, depending on what the New England Patriots do in the upcoming draft, will solidify. I mean, look, they signed Okorafor. They signed Jacoby, aforementioned. They didn't do a lot up front except for Mike Onwenu.
Yeah.
Onwenu.
It's a tough name.
It's a tongue twister. So they did some movement up front, but whether or not that's going to pay dividends for a Jacoby Brissett, that remains to be seen. But Jalen Daniels much more explosive. That's the guy you want to spend any type of move up quality picks to in order to acquire. I don't like the McCarthy move in New England. If you're going to do that, probably not a good idea. I would say if I were the New York Giants, I'd probably look at him as your starting quarterback potentially, depending on where you sit in that draft pecking order, if you will. It's so hard to pick because there's so many guys out there, so many qualified starting quarterbacks, at least in this draft class, along with other aforementioned draft classes that were complete busts, like the Josh Rosen 2018 NFL draft. And of course, I think he's still playing somewhere. I don't know where, but somewhere out of the last 5 teams he's played on, maybe 6 at this point. I don't know. So it's really hard to pick. It's hard to say. But when it's all said and done, I think if you're New England and you're tired of losing and back-to-back losing seasons and less than stellar 2-16, you clearly want to do something more and make a splash and go get Jalen Daniels.
Yeah, I think that would be a great move. No question. I personally think he's the best quarterback in the draft. And my next question is, I did have a thought, too, that maybe the Patriots, they had success drafting number 199, if I remember correctly. And it was a quarterback, I think. And maybe what they ought to do is just repeat that process and wait till that round and draft whatever available quarterback, right? It seemed to work the last time.
I think so, but
To
the
your point,
coach is
there's
not there.
it's deep.
You have Terod Mayo
Yeah.
there now, so I don't know. Unless you find a gem at 199, I don't know who that's going to be. But none of these quarterbacks will be at 199. I can guarantee it.
Okay, last question before I do my NBA algorithm thing. If you're the Chicago Bears, and let's say hypothetically the Giants, as we've been talking, call you up, and now the Giants are going for Caleb Williams, and they offer you 2 number 1s and a number 3, would you do it?
Rudy, would you do it?
Oh man, oh that's tough. I'm going to say yes. Why? Because because we already know what Justin Fields can do outside of the pocket. But what you don't know is guys that are unproven coming out of college. And that's always going to be the give and take. Who's going to be good, who's not going to be good. It's hard to say. Nobody thought much of number 199 for New England Patriots and Tom Brady. He came out looking like a complete sloth, not very athletic, but he beat his own 40 when he was in his 40s. So a lot to be said for diamonds in the rough, and Tom Brady was certainly one of those coming out of Michigan. But one thing that you have to be just assured of is whether or not that same production, that same type of offensive line or similar-ish in regards to protection up front, and then what that really looks like from the type of weapons. You have to look at yards after the catch. You have to look at a versatile playing game. If you're a wide receiver, if you're a tight end, what kind of weapons do you have, and were they better than the ones that you played with when you were in Chicago? As a quarterback, you have to, and this is a business, ladies and gentlemen, for those that are watching. This isn't the NBA where you get to pick wherever you want to play in season, cry or whine, and not play your way out of that respective team. This is completely different because guys just don't have that kind of pull in regards to their NFL playing lives and where they're going to go. Because at this point, once you sign that bottom line, you're basically owned by that team until they give up your rights to another team. So with that being said, I would do it. I would do it in a heartbeat. Absolutely. You give rounds 1 and 2. Oh yes, definitely.
Do you agree, Jim?
You know what? I do. I get it that everybody hates Justin Fields. I get it. I just think there's enough there. I think that if he's coached up and he's in a good system, and look, if they get another receiver in the house, if they take that Giants 6 pick, they can get a top-level receiver. And I do think Justin Fields can be okay. He's not Patrick Mahomes. I get that. But he's not Russell Wilson either. So I think he's okay. And I would take that deal like Rudy would. But now I'll give the Bears some credit. Last year when they went to Carolina, not only did they get the picks, they got DJ Moore. If the Giants want that quarterback, I'm saying you're either giving me Kayvon Thibodeau or you're giving me maybe Deontay Banks, but you're giving, or Andrew Thomas, the only offensive lineman they have who's any good. But I would hold them hostage for one of those players as well. And my guess is they could get it.
Yeah, I think so too. And wouldn't it be something if they do that trade and Harrison is still available at number 6 or number 5, whatever the play would be? That would be a coup, like the movie Draft Day with Costner, wouldn't it? I mean, that would be a major solution, and giving Justin Fields the ability to actually have a weapon for once. That would be huge.
Well, give him a winning season. Anybody, give him a winning season. He doesn't have to run for his life. Give him some weapons. I understand he has DJ Moore, but give him something more. And I'm talking better coaching, better structure. I'm not going to say the Bears are a horrible organization, but I mean, when you look at some of the contracts that they've signed for some of these guys, doesn't exactly shine on paper. It's kind of like a smudge out in the rain. You take a new piece of homework you worked all night long on and get it rained on, and you have that to deliver to your teacher. Good luck with that. If you give him a winning season and a better organizational structure, you're going to see a lot better things. It's like new guys, new face, but a different place.
Yep, I agree.
You got a good question in the chat, man. You got a good question in the chat.
Let's see here.
Carla asks, what makes Justin Fields not the franchise quarterback for the Bears right now? What do you guys think about that?
He doesn't have the weapons around him. He doesn't have the proper coaching. And anybody who gets him as a backup quarterback, like we said earlier in the show, is getting a diamond in the rough. His upside is huge, in my opinion. And I do think the Bears are making a mistake if they don't give him 1 or 2 more years and put some talent around him. That's my take. What do you guys think?
Fields, I'll be honest with you, going back to what I just said, Justin Fields is not the quarterback for the Chicago Bears franchise because they haven't had a franchise quarterback in how long?
Ever.
Exactly. So think about who you need to get from an organizational standpoint. We see multiple teams do it. They drop tiers and say, you know what? Let's get some better coaches in there from an organizational standpoint. Who can we afford? How can we scout better? And to your point, Jim, you're right. Scouts don't really do as good of a job as they actually should have, and they should on a regular basis. They get paid $50,000 or more, give or take a year, and that comes right off the top. So earn your keep. Get the right guys in the right positions to do the right things for the right reasons. And at this point, it hasn't been the case, especially for the Chicago Bears. And even with Jay Cutler there smoking a stogie on the sidelines, as Gift would represent, he's not the guy of the future there either. So all these number 1 picks that Chicago Bears have had make them not the franchise quarterback because of the organizational blunder where you pick guys that aren't ready to start. Justin Fields is not ready to start when you put him into that position. Jim Nagy's to blame for all of that. So again, this is about you not listening to the upper tier and doing what you need to do as a coach. If you disagree with ownership, there's a reason why. The numbers don't lie. Look at the numbers. Look at the production. If it's going to lie, then smack that person on the head and send them packing, because head coaching positions in the NFL are at a premium. And unless you prove your worth, you're out. Simple.
Wow, Rudy Bill Belichick Reyes.
The Bears brought in Shane Waldron to run the offense. Waldron did a wonderful job with Geno Smith. Look, Geno Smith's been around well over a decade, a backup for most of that. And I know he had weapons. I know he had Tyler Lockett, and I know he had DK Metcalf, but it was really Shane Waldron that kind of unlocked him. A little more use of play action, a little more creative use in the passing game, letting him drive the ball downfield. And Waldron coming to Chicago, that if Fields stays there, I really believe that Waldron could get more out of him. And they use a lot of pre-snap motion. And I know that he knows how to build off that. And it gives quarterbacks valuable information pre-snap. I do think that they do keep Fields. Waldron gets more out of him.
Yeah. I'm on board with that completely. And I think that's one of the reasons why there will be no Justin Fields trade. You're going to see the Chicago Bears moving Justin Fields absolutely nowhere, maybe a bigger place, but he's still on his rookie contract. So not a whole lot of attention to be paid, or at least should be paid, to Justin Fields at this point. Yeah, it's at a premium, but at the same token, he needs to play out his contract and prove with the right coaching, with the right amount of weapons, with the right protection up front, where he can actually prosper and do something headed towards postseason play. He's put games on his back. I've seen him do it, but whether or not the offensive line, whether or not the weapons that he has, whether or not the organization can recognize that he does bring value as a starting quarterback for this team, it's going to be another subpar 500 season for the Chicago Bears.
Can't agree more. I hope they stick with him somehow. And I know that's probably a long shot right now, but
not really long when you only have two places available for him to be a starting quarterback in. And even that's going to be questionable because he has to go up against guys that have already been there, or newfound guys that are familiar with the system that's currently played in, albeit Minnesota or in Las Vegas.
Yep. Let's do the NBA algorithm of the day. I'm 70% over the last 55 NBA plays. That also means they lose 30% of the time. So based on the recent trend, this algorithm has a 30% chance of losing. And it goes against the Sixers tonight, even though I have their hat on. I usually try to wear a hat that is the team that I'm liking quite a bit for the evening card, but the Sixers don't have Joel Embiid, and it shows immensely. Their play since he's been out has not been good. It hasn't been consistent. They've had some big wins. They beat Cleveland on the road. They beat Dallas on the road. But then again, Dallas, gives up 200 points a game every single night. That defense is, it's not even as good as a Matador. I mean, it's pretty bad. But anyway, in this situation, they're playing the Bucks, and ironically, we have Doc Rivers, the former coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, coaching against his team. And after a rather poor start in Milwaukee, he's got these guys playing pretty darn well. So what we're going to do is bet on a team that has won between 60 and 75% of their games. The opponent has a winning record, and it occurs in the second half of the season. The team, being the Bucks, has lost to the spread by 47 or more points spanning their last 7 games, 38-22 straight up, 39-19 for 69% since 2015. And if the total is 224 or fewer points, the current total is 220.5. These teams have gone 27-11 for 71% since 2016. So that is the 8-unit premium VIP bet that goes to my clients. And like I said, do what you want with it. If you like it, join me. If you don't, no harm, no foul. But just keep in mind, these are not locks. They don't exist, and they do lose occasionally. So let's take the last couple of minutes here. We'll go around the horn and just share whatever promotion you have, where they can find your excellent work. And let's start with Rudy.
Well, I will be on iHeart Radio, as I usually am. You'll find me on Seattle 1090 The Patriot. You'll also find me on KAIB in Southern California on the iHeart Radio app. So download that if you like news and you're into that kind of thing. You can always go to therudedogshow.com. Always working on stuff behind the scenes. So don't be fooled by this pleasant demeanor. I'm a shark. So unless you have a life preserver and or a motorboat, stay out of the water.
I mean, this is the reincarnation of Bill Belichick, I think, right before our very eyes. Jim, what's going on?
So, but I'm a lot more post-conference friendly. So just those that are watching know. Just know.
I know, Jim, that your work is found over at rotowire.com, but you do a lot of other stuff too, SiriusXM. Tell us where we can find all that stuff.
The main hub is always the X at Jim Coventry NFL. Anything I do, I post there. So whether it's video, whether it's audio, or whether it's shows I'm on, you'll always get that. I'm on TikTok as well. I don't dance, which is good for everybody, but I do some football videos there as well. But again, at Jim Coventry NFL, we're good, but you never want to see me dance. And it's nice to know I'm on a different Shark Tank with Rudy.
I love it. Very well done. That's unrehearsed, too. That was excellent. So that'll take us to the end of the show. I thank you both for your valuable time. Great show. And we'll cap it off with Xander Schauffele and Rory McIlroy tied atop the leaderboard at the Players' Championship at 6 under. They are through their first 12 holes. They both started on the back 9. So they have the gauntlet of 15, 16, and 17, and 18 all behind them. I wouldn't be surprised to see one of them get to -8 by the end of the day. With that said, thanks for watching the show, and always remember, bet with your head, never over it, and may all the wins be yours.